So I just hit the record, just so that you all know, we do record our meetings and then we place it on our Facebook and our YouTube. Welcome everybody. It is Thursday, April 27th, and we're starting our meeting. We're calling our meeting to order at 7:06 p.m. Welcome everyone. And so today we have a packed agenda. I hope you all received it. We are welcome all, and we will start with our public gallery sessions. Just so that everybody knows, you have 3 minutes in total, 2.5 minutes to share, and then 30 seconds so that we can come up with next steps. Okay, do we have anybody that would like to speak? Raise your hand for the public agenda. Okay, Ms. Granby.
Good evening, everyone. For the public agenda, Granby's Funeral Services has been in this community as of today, 39 years. Therefore, we are not new to improvements or changes in our community. In the areas of Community Board number 12, a safer and better implementation of the bike lanes would have been better on Barnes Avenue rather than White Plains Road. No one in this meeting can object to cleaner environment for all of us. However, we do need to be smarter and not work harder. Right now, we are working harder. The implementation of these bike lanes is causing multiple restrictions to our community. One, in regards to the safety of our community, because EMS, fire, police are not able to pass on White Plains Road like they used to. We cannot have cars pulling to the right so that they can pass because there is no right for them to pull to. And if you notice, if you ever drive around Community Board number 12, Community Board number 12 is even the worst part of the whole strip because you have the EMS vehicles, you have the school vehicles, and you have people who are trying to learn how to park. Now, when I say that, I say all of us, when we all learn to drive and get our license, we all had to learn how to parallel park on a curb, not the way it is right now. So right now, it's a devil catch can, and it's showing truly that a lot of people do not know how to park. Also, with this implementation of the bike lane, it is definitely making an economic impact on our community because you are not able to pull up, park your car, and go to a merchant because there is no rhyme or reason of how to park. Each block on White Plains Road has a different method of how people are parking, and it truly shows that people do not know how to park, let alone how they pull out of those spaces when they are parking. The merchants who are very accustomed to people parking, buying their goods, then leaving, parking, buying their goods, and leaving are not getting the traffic that they used to. Now, to say, oh, they should be getting foot traffic, there is no foot traffic because the people can't park their cars anywhere to get out of their cars and get to the merchants. Also, I think in regards to the whole sustainability of the community, we should have been really engaged. We were not engaged as merchants. We were not really engaged as a community. This decision to have these bike lanes is a bad decision. We need to go to real working solutions. Like I said, having the bike lane on Barnes Avenue would be safer for
You have 5 seconds left.
Would be safer. And I thank you for my time.
Thank you for sharing, Ms. Granby. Next up, we have Mary.
Yes, I was at your meeting 1 year ago, April 28th, 2022, when you approved the bike lanes. And, I was talking about something else, a smoke shop, and you helped me with that. But there was one person who spoke about the bike lanes. And what he said was, my concern is that it seems like we're favoring bikes. And on White Plains Road, that seems to be not working with the amount of businesses on White Plains Road. I don't know how this got approved. And maybe I wasn't at the meeting or our residents weren't at the meeting, but it seems very weird that the bike agenda seems to be so strong. And I don't see the amount of bicycles that are needed to make such a drastic change in the streets on White Plains Road. Now, at that meeting, there was a lot of discussion about trucks parked on Nearwood Avenue, and the district manager and I believe Councilman Dinowitz, both of whom I respect, said, well, we have to think of our constituents. We have to think of our constituents. A lot of the truckers live in the neighborhood. Well, I ask, why not think of your constituents when they're the businesses? The businesses pay a lot of taxes. We should be considered too. And why allow the city to experiment on White Plains Road? Mr. Torres said that we were the first. Why allow us to be the first? I believe that the board was manipulated by the Department of Transportation and the city, and the fact that there was inadequate notice is related to that. And, you know, at that meeting, you approved on the condition that there be no bike lanes on the sidewalk. But there are lines on the sidewalk for bike lanes. So I just ask that, you know, you consider us, you spread the word to other community boards that they have to solicit input. I think everyone knows this is a disaster, if we're going to be honest. If you go to White Plains Road, you drive down the street, it is horrendous. It's one lane traffic and it's very narrow for over and over again. I drove down the other day and in 3 blocks, I had to stop and go over to the lane 3 times. One was a police car that couldn't pull over. The other was a garbage truck that couldn't pull over. So now they can't pull over. We're jogging
It's not a work meeting.
for both. So thank you very much for your time.
On your phone? Sweet.
Thank you, Mary. Next up, we have Joe and Angel.
Number one, with Mary and Mrs. Granby said is actually true, but there's a very bad problem with deliveries and the safety of this, because they have to deliver in the middle of the street and stuff, and we have to send people out to keep an eye on them. We had a delivery today. The guy was on 239th Street, and we were in the middle of 238th Street. We had to go down and get the item, and he was afraid to park in the middle of the block because he was afraid of unloading. He could get hit. There is no safety feature with this and stuff like that. You're absolutely putting the bikes before businesses, and then we're getting out of the cars in the middle of the L, where things are falling off it, and forget what it does to the cars. That's another subject. It's not something that was well thought out. It was something that was pushed through by somebody, and it should be reevaluated. And the businesses are a lot more important than the bikes. There's not enough bike traffic on White Plains Road to warrant all this stuff like that. And in fact, half of the businesses are losing their shirts and stuff. They can't get deliveries, they can't do anything, and they lose half of their customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe and Angel. Next up, we have Sue Peters.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I want to bring up another issue to start to educate your board about the mayor's office of technology is now putting into all 5 boroughs on the sidewalks 32 feet cell towers with 5 antennas at the top of them. Many community boards are speaking out, passing resolutions against this. And I just want to tell people, you need to do your own reading and thinking about this, because the mayor's office of technology is not giving all the information out when they do their presentations. And I just will say this. They will not share the expected radiation levels emanating from these jumbo cell towers 10 feet from where people live. They're right on the sidewalks. If you live in a 3rd story apartment building and you have 10 feet outside your window, this jumbo antenna, you will be radiating yourself and your family constantly 24/7. OTI will tell you they're safe. Do not believe them. Do your own research. And for one thing, they say the FCC, which is the agency in Washington that oversees these cell towers, federal agency, the FCC has guidelines that says above this guideline, it's not safe. Below this guideline, it's safe. That guideline was set in 1996 by the FCC, and they refused to change it, even though in 1996 there were not that many cell phones with people having it up against their ear. Now there's hundreds of millions of cell phones, and they refuse to look at 11,000 pages of studies that prove health effects, deleterious health effects
I'm
below the
sorry,
guideline.
your
So
time is
for-
up, but this is an important matter. Can you make sure that you connect with Carla and we can bring this up in committee for
Yes.
on our environmental, because we should pay more attention to this, but let's bring that up in committee. So if
Great.
you don't mind connecting with
Is
Carla.
Carla the district manager?
She's the chair. I'm the district manager is George, but Carla is the chair of the environmental committee.
Oh,
So we
great.
can bring
Thank
that
you
up
so
there.
much.
Put
Thank
that
you.
in the chat. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, next up we have, hold on. Q.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Hope all is well. Just to piggyback off of what Ms. Peter said, there is a lot of times that information is given to us and it's not transparent. And, to piggyback off of what Mary said, I do feel that, the Department of Transportation has manipulated certain type of information when given to the community board, and that, we as people who own properties and pay taxes, we have zero equity in any form of decision making. I'm a practical person and I put the community first. I've done breast cancer money for breast cancer, coat drives, food drives, toy drives out of my own money, financial literacy events. I've literally spent over $250,000 in this community because I love and I care about this community. Sometimes, John may say something I may not agree with. Mr. Alfredo may say something I may not agree with, but I do know that they care about this community, and I just feel that there are certain individuals on the community board who don't care about the community. In terms of the bus lanes on Gun Hill Road, that's going to be a disaster. There's so much parking that's going to be reappropriated, and that's going to be an issue. And the Department of Transportation hasn't considered any of our concerns. They wanted to bring up Pelham Parkway. Pelham Parkway in one direction is literally wider than Gun Hill Road in all directions. Pelham Parkway has a lot of parks, a lot of residential, and they still have side parking. So there's so many things with the bike lanes, with the bus lanes that don't make sense, and the quality of living really isn't there. And it's really disappointing that we have people that really love and care about this community and that try and that give back. And it's like, we're facing this because we don't have one voice to literally step up and speak to the government. So I hope something can be done, and thank you for my time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Q. We appreciate your participation. And just to remind everybody, right, like the full board meeting, the public gallery really doesn't allow us the full potential to talk about these issues. We invite you to come to our committees, right? That's where impact can be made. And numbers matter. And so if we really want to make an impact, we implore you all, bring your folks, bring the local residents, come to committee. That's when we can have these discussions at large. So thank you so much. Odette Wilkins.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for having me. I'm President and General Counsel of Wired Broadband. I'm located in Queens, New York City, and we are a nonprofit focusing on safe technology for the public. So I just want to build on what Sue Peters was talking about, and that is that with respect to Link 5G towers, the city has no information about what kinds of antennas are going to be used, what the power of the antennas are. And of course, I would be happy to talk about this at the Committee on Environment. But I just want to give you an overview that there has been no transparency, and we have had FOILs submitted to OTI since November of 2021, which have either gone unanswered or they say they don't have the information. Now, how do you deploy 7,500 towers in a potential of 7,500 cell towers in New York City without knowing what antennas you're using, what the power potential is, and what the cumulative exposure of all of these antennas are going to be? Now, there's been a recent development. The Federal Communications Commission just notified CityBridge, which is a site developer constructing these cell towers, that they're in violation of federal law. Now, OTI has been saying that they're in compliance with federal law. They are not. The Federal Communications Commission has not ruled out enforcement actions against CityBridge. They were supposed to have engaged in environmental review and review of the historical preservation aspects of the potential sites for these towers and for each antenna. They did not do that. And so they have constructed these towers without the appropriate review. So the FCC has given, they are on notice now, and the FCC has not ruled out enforcement actions against CityBridge. So not only is there no transparency, there's lack of compliance with federal law, which puts them in material breach of their representations and warranties in the franchise agreement with New York City. It puts them in breach with their covenants from the franchise agreement with New York City. And at this point, we really need to break this wide open and to really re-examine the entirety of this program. And there has not been meaningful community input on this. And the Public Design Commission tasked OTI to go around to the community boards to find out what the community input is with respect to the design and the provisioning of services and other factors. But OTI has only been asking for, where do you want to site them? Well, that's not the directive that PDC gave them. This is supposed to be a pilot program of 200 towers.
Okay, your 3 minutes are up, but again, I also invite you, can you please connect with Carla? This is something that we should speak more in depth in committee.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Does anyone else for public gallery?
Yes, please.
Your name?
My name is Jemima Osafo. I'm a social work student at Lehman College and currently working, doing my internship at Rain Senior Older Adult at Ganhill Road.
You sound muffled. You're cutting up a bit.
I'm from Lehman College, a student at Lehman College, and currently doing my internship at Rain Ganhill Road. I wanted to share some of the services that we provide at our older adult center. So RAIN offers services for individuals who are above 80 years and 65. We offer transportation system to older adults who are available to community 9, 10, 11, and 12. And members who qualify for this are people who have Medicare only. We also offer home delivery meal, which help maintain the nutritional health for homebound older adults and also continue a quality life for them. We also have low-income housing for older adults. We provide low-income for older adults with the option that allow them to live independently. We also have case management, which our case managers link older adults to various essential services such as transportation, health care services, and others. We, at my center where I am, which is 3377 White Place Road, we have activities at the older adult center such as karaoke, Zumba, daily exercises, computer classes, which is every Tuesday at 9 to 10:45. We have also nutritional classes where a licensed nutritionist give overtake and a quality health life for the older adults. We also have a trip for the older adults who are at the center every twice a month. We organize a trip for them, which they only pay for $5, and they go to places like Christmas Tree or Walmart. We also have Zumba classes. We have karaoke. We have home health aid services for older adults who qualify for them. Our numbers for the home health aid services are 347.
If you could put that in the chat.
Okay, I'm gonna do that.
Put all
Thank
the
you.
information in the chat because you sound staticky, so we didn't get it all, okay? Make sure you
Okay.
put it in the chat. Thank you.
Thank
Virginia?
Yes, I had a meeting with the Wakefield taxpayers, and the meeting consists of the water board. And we was told that we need to speak to someone from the environmental area about these problems in the ground for 3 different areas, that they have something going on in the ground, the chemicals. I don't know if anybody's aware of what's going on there, that they have some chemicals in the ground in our neighborhood. And I was told that the water board that was our guest speaker was not the right person. So I want to actually make y'all aware of what's going on. I don't know if y'all know about these chemicals that's going on in our neighborhood that's supposed to be not so good for us.
Thank you, Virginia. Carla, who's the chair of environmental committee, she's here. Carla, if you could follow up with her on that, that would be great.
Yeah, land use should be in on this too.
Okay. So Carla, if you can gather maybe Virginia's information, you want to say something?
Yeah, we both, Carl and I will both be in touch with Ms. Sanders. We'll follow up.
Wonderful, thank you. Anyone else before we move on to the next item on our agenda?
Yes, hi. My name is Serena Etting. Hello.
Hi, Serena.
Hi, how are you? Yes, I own property over in the Northeast Bronx on Fish Avenue. And, you know, I, along with Q, you know, went around trying to get signatures to try to remove the bus lanes, the bike lanes for underneath White Plains Road under the L. And, you know, we just want to make sure that we actually have something done about this. I'm also learning through Q that they're placing the bike lanes on Gun Hill Road. And the traffic that is on Gun Hill Road is insane right now. If you do this, or when it's done, it's going to be far worse.
Where'd you get this from?
Say it again?
There are no bike lanes going on Gun Hill Road.
Well, what is it that there's?
They're putting an express bus lane on Gun, and they're not taking any of the parking.
No, the bus lanes, sorry.
Bus lane.
Correction.
The bus lane is
The
not
bus
going to
lanes
mess
that
with
are
the
going.
best. Right now, there's people double park on Gun Hill Road, which, and I'm going to tell you, find out when is a transportation meeting, and then come to the transportation meeting like our chair said, and we could discuss this issue at the transportation meeting. All right.
So, we wanted to know, like, how is it that this is all done without the community actually voting on it?
The community knows about it, and Q was at the last meeting. Ask Q.
No, but we heard about it after the fact.
But it's not done yet. They're actually working on it.
Yeah, but we don't want it to be done. That's the thing.
No.
So what he's saying is, why
We're
don't we all
against it.
rally? Why don't we all rally at the committee meeting, right? And so we've been mentioning for the past 3 months. What was your name again?
Serena Etting.
Serena, have you been to our committee meetings?
Yeah, I've been before, like when I had issues with my tenants and I had
But have
people
you
in front
been
of
to
my
the
home.
past 3 meetings that we've had where we've been having these discussions?
I missed the last one, but I was there about maybe a month or two ago.
We want to make sure that you're joining again, right? Like, we are only 38 board members, right? We need you all there to be more impactful. And so we keep saying this, come to our committee meetings, let's plan, let's strategize, but we can't do this on our own. We do need your support and your push. The best place to have these discussions at large are at our committee meetings. So please put your information in the chat and we'll make sure that you're included in our list.
Well, I'm on the phone, so how do I'm not able to put my information in the chat.
In the chat. Does Q have your information? Can he put it for you?
Yeah, he should be able to.
Q, can you put her email in the chat so that we add her to our email list? The more of you that join our committees, the more powerful we are, right?
Well,
We had a walkthrough when we were doing having the elected officials for the White Plains Road bike lanes. Only a few people showed up. That was the moment where the elected officials, the commissioner was there for everybody to be there. And so again, all we're asking is for your support. Show up. That's how we make an impact. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else before we move on? Great. Now we're going on to the third item on the agenda, elected officials reports. Who do we have first?
Close the hearing first.
This was the public gallery session. So we're closing that item on our agenda. Public gallery session has closed. Now we're moving on to the elected officials reports. Jenna?
Hi, this is Jenna Klaus from Councilmember Eric Dinowitz's office.
Hi.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much for having us tonight. First, I just wanted to let everybody know how to reach us. So by phone, you can reach us at 718-549-7300, or you can email dinowitz@council.nyc.gov. And if you want to see us in person, our office is under renovation right now, but we're at the Assembly Members Office on 3107 Kingsbridge Avenue. We're also at libraries across the district. So you can contact us for that information. Some events we have coming up, we're working to get a rain barrel event in Woodlawn. That should be sometime in June, and we will alert the board before then. Also, I would love for CB12 to be a co-sponsor of our upcoming Local Law 97 webinar. So I'll put my email in the chat. So hopefully I can hear from somebody from the board tomorrow and we can get your logo on the flyer. Next up for budget, yesterday the mayor presented his executive budget. The council and Councilmember Dinowitz, as a member of the budget negotiating team, are preparing to fight against cuts affecting CUNY, libraries, essential services. So stay tuned for his work on that. We're still working to allocate our own discretionary budget, which has millions of dollars that we give towards programming, services, capital improvements. We're taking feedback from the board, from constituents on how you would like to see that money spent. So I'll also put this in the chat. You can fill out our form at ericdinowitz.nyc/budget feedback. So we're really hoping a lot of people participate in that. Just one more thing, the board should have received a legislative update from our office today, but I just wanted to share some highlights from today's stated meeting. So Councilmember Dinowitz introduced 4 resolutions today to enhance the educational experiences of New York City students and to honor the contributions of veterans. He also voted on and co-sponsored a number of bills to promote safety, security, and the dignity of New York communities. And we also voted on resolutions to fully fund the MTA, combat anti-Semitism, and remove bureaucracy in government. So I'm sure if everybody else, if the community is interested in this, I can also share that memo. We put them together every 2 weeks for stated meetings. And that is it for me. Thank you so much.
Jenna, if you can put all that information in the chat, that would be great. Next up, we have Alina.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I see a lot of friendly faces and then I see some new faces. My name is Alina Dow. I am the Bronx Borough Director for the Mayor's Community Affairs, and I cover Community Boards 7 through 12. I just wanted to share a few updates and information. So as we know that the summer is going to be approaching really quickly, and while our application process has ended for the summer youth program, we are still looking for businesses that can provide opportunities for our children to work at. So please, I'm going to share in the chat a link if you know any businesses. We don't want our kids to be out there doing nothing. If we have businesses that can provide jobs to them with the city paying, then we know that they'll be somewhere and they won't be getting in trouble. I also wanted to let you know that the mayor is committed to reducing the city's food-based emission by 33% by 2030. And the mayor also has, I'm sure everybody has heard, but he has appointed the first ever rat czar. So if you have areas that you think are plagued with rats, please send me the information and then I will connect with the rat czar and see if we can get them over there to address that issue. I also wanted to let you know that the city and the mayor has intended to file a lawsuit against Kia and Hyundai for refusing to safeguard the vehicles that have been broken into because of the TikTok. You know, on TikTok, they've been showing these kids how to break into cars and steal them. So the mayor has said that he intends to file a lawsuit against them. He also has announced a tentative contract with the PBA. They have reached a tentative contract. The launch of the City Rising enrollment portal, it's open and it's closing on May 1st. So if you have any young people, little ones that you want to try to get into the Summer Rising program, I'll also include the link in the chat for you to be able to fill that out. I always tell everybody the mayor wants to give you information directly from himself. So please sign up for his newsletter. He has a podcast as well. And we hope that you guys can stay connected. I will put my information in the chat. If there's other things that you wanted to contact me about, please feel free to contact me. That's about it. Everyone have a good night.
Thank you, Alina. Next up, Kiara, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm trying to put my camera on. I'm sorry. I'm Kira. I'm the new director of community boards of the Borough President's Office. It's great to see you all. I'm also a resident of Community Board 12, so I'm really excited to be joining your meetings again. I just have a quick report. We are finishing up our reappointment interviews. This is the first year that the Borough President has asked that we do reappointment interviews. I have a few people left of Community Board 12. So please just look out for the emails that I've been sending and schedule a time. And then in addition to that, we are going to be wrapping up interviews for members who are applying to the community board. This year we got 547 applications, which is awesome. And, we thank the boards for doing community outreach and getting people to apply. So we'll be doing reappointments and new appointments in the near future. I'll put my contact information in the chat should anyone need to reach me. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiara. It was great to have you here.
Thanks.
Next up, Donella.
Hello, everyone. My name is Danella from the Office of Assemblyman Jeffrey Dinowitz. Unfortunately, he could not be here tonight. They are still working on the budget. However, just a few updates. Our office we're hosting 2 shred events in May and June. So one is May 7th and will be on West 235th and Johnson Avenue from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And the next one is June 11th and will be in front of our office. I will post the dates and the locations in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Cynthia.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, awesome. So, hey, good evening, everyone. This is Cynthia from Councilmember Kevin Riley's office. Just to go over the few procedurals. So, we have 2 offices, one at 940 East Gun Hill Road in between Bronxwood and Colden Avenue, and the other in Co-op City Section 5 at 135 Einstein Loop, room 44 on the 2nd floor. And just wanted to go over the phone number, 718-684-5509, email district12, district12 at council.nyc.gov. And then just going into the events, we've got a good number of events coming up for the spring and summer season. Just wanted to go over the stuff for the end of May and the end of April and beginning of May. So this weekend, we're going to be co-hosting with the Northeast Bronx YMCA the Healthy Kids Day Initiative event. This will be from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. this Saturday, April 29th at 1250 East 229th Street. And I know the forecast isn't too good right now, but this event will be rain or shine. If it's good weather outside, we'll be outside. If not, we'll be inside the YMCA. Next week, we're also going to be having a Citizens Committee grant info session. This will be with the Baychester Library. So this will be an opportunity for neighborhood associations, both ones that have a 501c3 status and not, to be able to learn about how to get a potential grant from the Citizens Committee for New York City. They have small micro grants to do neighborhood beautification projects and just honestly all sorts of good stuff. And they actually do also have a small business program as well. This event will be May 2nd, 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. at 2049 Ash Loop in Co-op City. And then May 3rd is definitely a little packed. May 3rd, we have a cooking demonstration and nutritional education event at the Bay Eden Senior Center, 1220 East 229th Street. That will be from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. It's going to have a live cooking demonstration, how to just make sure that you're able to prepare healthy foods, healthy options, managing a budget, because honestly, we know it's very tight right now. And also, we're going to be partnering with the CB12 Economic Development Committee to co-host an event for small businesses at the CB12 board office. And that will be from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. at 4101 White Plains Road. Business owners will be able to learn about how they can contest violations, how they can resolve anything that they may be in the wrong for, and just be able to know their rights and get some resources from the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings, and to be able to connect with the Economic Development Committee at CB12 and of course our office to find out about these events and more. You can visit the link tree linktr.ee/cm Kevin C. Riley. Thank you guys so much for putting up. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Cynthia. Make sure you put
I know
everything in
it's a
the
lot.
chat.
I put it
No,
in the chat before and I'll
put it in the chat. Yeah. Thank you. Next up, we have Renell.
Hi, this is Renell from State Senator Jamal T. Bailey's office. So last week we had our annual Taste of the District at the YMCA. So we're now closing out Taste of the District by having specials from April 27th, which is today, through May 4th. If you're interested in which small businesses are partaking, you can provide your email, directly email me in the chat, and then I could send out that information. Also, we're having a Mother's Day celebration Saturday, May 13th from 1 to 4 in Co-op City. If you're interested in that also, just state that you are interested in that in the chat and I'll provide the link. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronell. Any other representatives from our elected officials? Alexis, are you here? Okay. All right. So I think that concludes our elected officials reports. So we will now move on to our special presentation today. We have Paul Phillips, who's with the City Planning Office of the Bronx Borough President's Office. As you know, we're really wanting to make sure that we are fully informed. There's a lot of development happening in our district. Many of us aren't familiar with zoning laws and codes, and so it's important that we become informed, as well as other questions that we may have. Even as a board, although we are advisory, there is an opportunity for us to sometimes have a vision of a development that we would like to see. And so Paul will be walking us through how we can potentially make our own vision possible and happen and come to fruition. Thank you, Paul. And if you can give us your title and all that. I'm sorry, I didn't capture that.
That's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, the floor is
perfect. So my title is Borough Director, and I'm the Borough Director here at the Bronx office at the Department of City Planning. So before I begin, I just wanted to thank the board, District Manager George Torres, and Board Chair Cornell for the invitation this evening. As the Board Chair mentioned, my name is Paul Phillips. I am the new, well, I guess I'm still new. I've been on the job 3 months. I will use new until someone tells me I can't. For the Department of City Planning in the Bronx office. Just a little background for those of you. So I've worked for the city for 17 years, and of those 17 years, I've spent 14 of those working here in the Bronx. I worked for the Department of City Planning from 2006 to 2016, and then most recently, I was a district manager at Community Board 4 here in the Bronx from 2016 until January of this year. As I mentioned, I've been on the job for a little over 3 months, and I've been making the rounds to all the Bronx CBs. Let me first start by saying I know firsthand how hard you all work as volunteers to contribute to the long-term growth and sustainabilities of your neighborhoods. I also have tremendous respect for and admiration for the work that you guys do. Having been a DM for nearly 7 years, I know the extraordinary responsibilities that you all are tasked with on a daily basis, land use and zoning being one of the most critical, as it has long-lasting impacts on your neighborhood. There is no repository or encyclopedia of knowledge that is more valuable about a neighborhood than the people that live and work there. My goal or hope for our office is that we can be a resource for all 12 boards across the borough and neighborhoods and the neighborhoods that serve them. Zoning and land use can be complicated and difficult to navigate for the public, especially in New York City. I've been doing this for 17 years and I continue to learn things every single day. So I completely get it and understand. I want to assure you all that the Bronx Office of City Planning is committed to providing you all with the tools and the knowledge necessary to make informed decisions about land use. We want to be a resource in helping you all understand zoning and land use and the city's land use review process. Most importantly, to allow you all to participate in a way that is meaningful and impactful. I believe in transparency and communication. I cannot promise you that we will always agree and have consensus 100% of the time, but I can promise you that we will operate with intentionality and purpose and listen actively. I look forward to working with you all in this new role and continue serving the city of New York and the borough of the Bronx. Tonight, I'm going to walk you through a little bit about zoning at a very high level, and then also take you through the city's land use review procedure, and then we'll open the floor for questions. Am I able to share my screen? Okay.
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Okay, let's just see. Okay, hold on. Hold on. Okay, what am I doing? Can you wait? Hold on. Can you hold on. Can you see my screen? Okay. All right, let's see. Stop. Okay, let's go to. Bear with me 1 second. I don't use WebEx, or we don't use
That's
WebEx
fine.
at
No.
all. So
Take your time. We could see your screen, but you need to get to the. There you go.
okay, so you can see my screen. Okay, hold on. Sorry, bear with me 1 second. Let me go to. Let me move that. Let's do that. Sorry, I have too many windows open. All right, let's do that. Let's do that. Okay. All right. Wait a second. Okay, so if I do share content. All right, there we go. Perfect. I think that should be it. All right, this is okay. Can you?
Yes, it's up now. Your PowerPoint.
You can see that?
We can see it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, you can see it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so why can't I see it? This is sorry.
No, it's okay.
What? You can see the PowerPoint.
Well, it was there and it vanished.
I am all right. Let's try this one more time.
But you had it. It's okay.
Share content. Okay. Share. Okay, there we go. Okay, now I think I got it. The third time's a charm. Let's see. Can you share content?
Something's coming up. There it is. And just for
Okay.
everybody, if you need to make it bigger, like right above the presentation, there's a percentage. Like mine is at 60. If you keep pressing the plus sign, it'll get bigger for you. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, let me just change my view. All right, sorry. Admin control. Okay, no, sorry.
You see that present button?
Okay, I think I've got it now. I apologize.
We see it. Go ahead. No worries.
All right, perfect. So just going through the agenda for tonight, for this presentation. So, going to talk a little bit about what we do as an agency, what zoning is about, where does it come from, a little bit of its genesis, zoning today, enforcement and the zoning resolution, some basic concepts and terms, and then why does zoning change? So just a little bit about us as an agency. So our mission as an agency is to foster sustainable growth of complete neighborhoods towards a city that meets the housing, economic, and social needs of all New Yorkers. Just in terms of our strategic mission, so focus under 5 key pillars. The first is support thriving neighborhoods through integrated community planning. The second is to lead citywide planning for housing production, job growth, and livability. The third, plan for a resilient and sustainable city that provides adequate infrastructure for growth. The fourth, ensure timely and responsive reviews of current planning applications, and we can talk a little bit more about like what that means and how that process works. And then the fifth is to supply objective planning data and expertise to a broad range of stakeholders. I'll also just note that last piece right there, that includes community boards. So I would encourage folks, and we can do something separately. The planner assigned to your district, unfortunately, is out and he could not be here, but we have lots of data that's available on our website in terms of demographic. We've done lots of studies, so I encourage folks to look at that data. I think it can be helpful in kind of helping you wrap your head around, I think, what's going on in the city, a little bit about zoning and land use, but also about specific topics, whether it be about open space, transportation, or jobs. There's a lot of data that's available there. Also demographic data as well. So what's the purpose of zoning? So zoning exists today to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of all of the users of this in the city of New York. So I'm going to talk a little bit just about the history of New York. So zoning came about. So we had rapid population growth and density, and we needed early regulations for safety, light, and air. And you can see some very early images of sort of, you know, these unprecedented sort of growth and development that took place. Buildings were regulated, so you can see here on the left an icon of a tenement building. So pre-regulation, you can sort of see the iteration. So in 1867, fire escapes were introduced. You had sort of the old law where light shafts and windows were introduced. And then, you know, from 1901 to 1929, you had stronger enforcement and you saw some larger courtyards. And if you're familiar with some of the older buildings around the city, and including in the Bronx, a lot of the buildings have, you know, they have inner courtyards and outer courtyards. How buildings were regulated. So the zoning resolution came into existence in 1916, and it was a part of reaction to buildings like the Equitable Building, which you can see here, which really had no real regulations, and you know, and it was a reaction to unsafe working conditions, including those in the textile industry. So the city began to be regulated according to 3 kinds of districts. So there were use districts, which separated the use districts. You had height districts, which introduced something called the sky exposure plan. And then you had area districts, which specified yards, courts, types, and sizes of residents. In 1961, the zoning resolution came into play, and it was based originally on tower in the park topology. There was a focus really on open space ratios, and then also on auto-oriented design. As you all may know, at that time, there was a huge push for suburbanization. The advent of the car had boomed, and so people were moving to the suburbs because they had access to vehicles. So all of this sort of played a role in sort of the construction of the zoning resolution in 1961. So zoning changes since 1961. So the city had to respond to new development and planning changes. These are just a few examples. So contextual zoning from 1987 to 89, introduced in the late 80s in order to produce buildings that were consistent with existing neighborhood character. And that's really important because what that does in contextual districts, it allows for predictability for folks to know what's going to be built, and so there's consistency there. So you know the heights of the buildings, they all have the same regulations in terms of yards and side yards, so that's really important. Mixed use districts were introduced in 1997, to allow mixed uses concurrently. These are particularly in areas where residential development could coexist with existing manufacturing uses. And what I'll point out here is that in MX districts, these are not heavy manufacturing uses. These are going to be light manufacturing uses. So like a woodworker, things that are compatible with residential districts. Also, the public realm, a lot of zoning changes have been made to improve the pedestrian experience in the public realm on streets or in public spaces and plazas, and to increase public access to the waterfront. Zoning has also been used as a tool to facilitate the development of affordable housing across the city, including the city's mandatory inclusionary housing text amendment and also quality housing. And then lastly, many changes have been passed to address the impacts of coastal flooding and sea level rise across the city of New York.
Dollar bills, dollar bills.
So just a little bit about who has the authority in terms of different city agencies. So the city charter gives authority to city planning to provide technical assistance for and develop changes to zoning resolutions. The Planning Commission enacts zoning map and text changes. The building departments, they are an enforcement agency, so they will interpret the zoning resolution and they will enforce zoning codes. And then you also have the Board of Standards and Appeals, which will grant variances to zoning for hardships on unique sites. So as of right development. So the majority of development in New York City is as of right development. That happens in accordance with the zoning resolution and the building code, and that's considered as of right. What this really means here is that DOB will review plans for compliance with the zoning resolution and with other applicable codes that includes fire codes and things of that nature, and DCP review is not needed in this case. I would note that over 90% of development happens across New York City in this way. So just want to clarify a few things. So in terms of what zoning does and doesn't do. So zoning determines what is permitted to be built and establishes patterns of development. It also influences the size of buildings, the shape of the buildings, and the permitted uses. What zoning does not do, it doesn't actually build anything. In order for something to be built, obviously depending on the type of use and size, someone has to own the property. There could be financing involved depending on who the developer is, but the zoning itself doesn't actually build anything. It will generate development if local conditions are not favorable to development, and it does not require tear down of existing buildings. So, for example, if there is a piece of property that is zoned for commercial use, for industrial uses, let's say, and it becomes rezoned for residential, that does not mean that business has to go out of business or it has to be torn down. That business can remain for as long as the person holds a lease or the property owner feels that use is actually necessary and a viable use of their property. So how dense can a building be? So here it just gives you an example of some different scenarios in terms of so floor area ratio, which is how we determine what could be built on a site. So it is really important to sort of look at this scenario right here. So floor area ratio tells you how much floor area can be on a given zoning lot, and is the measurement of the building's floor area in relation to the size of the parcel. The zoning district that a site is located in will influence the size and the shape of that building, but sets a maximum FAR. And here you see 4 different examples of a 2 FAR on a 10,000 square foot lot in different scenarios. So how dense can a building be? So these give you a few different examples. So one is a tower in the park. So you can see here the size of a lot, and given the zoning district, you have a 2.6 FAR here on the right. So because of open space regulations for the zoning district, buildings oftentimes can have lower floor areas than traditional buildings that may be more dense from the street. And then you can see here on the right some traditional neighborhood configurations here with different floor area ratios on different blocks. So how tall and how wide can a building be? I mentioned earlier that zoning is influenced by the size and shape of the buildings. The size and shape that is permitted by zoning is called a building envelope. The building envelope is influenced by a few factors, including the building height and then how far back from the street and other buildings it must be. So in some scenarios, a building will have what's called a setback. So a building could rise, for example, to a height of 60 feet and may need to set back anywhere from 10 to 20 feet before it can rise and, and achieve its full height. And you see that in many districts across the city, including in districts here in the Bronx. So the city is divided into several zoning districts, types of districts. The first is residential. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but when you see an R in front of a district, that's for residential. When you see a commercial, C, that's for a commercial district, and M is for manufacturing. And then as the numbers go up, the intensity of those uses increases. And then the last number, if there's a dash, will indicate what the parking requirements are in that particular district. So zoning and Bronx Community District 12. So a couple of things here that I want to point out. Zola is a great tool. If you guys have not used Zola, I would encourage you to go on. So Zola is a New York City zoning and land use tool. There are many different configurations on here. You can toggle and turn things off, so you can find things like floodplain elevations. You can find out council districts. You can also map if there are historic districts. You can do the Senate districts. You can also do the city council districts. And here you can see sort of this is a screenshot from Zola from Board 12. And you can see here, and I'll just point out that a lot of your board is mostly residential. Your commercial development is concentrated along White Plains Road and Gun Hill Road. You have medium density to not really high density commercial residential districts. But I encourage folks, this is a great tool for you to find out what zoning is. The other thing I will say is when you click on some of these, you will click on a district, for example, you can get a description of that particular district. It will take you to a different page, which will describe the particular zoning district in greater detail. So how to read a zoning map. So so if you look at there, the dotted line will indicate a recent rezoning. B indicates a zoning district, so there'll be a letter and a number, and then C will indicate, you can see there in gray, where in the gray tone, where there may be a special district may be indicated. And so there are zoning maps for the entire city of New York. They are on our webpage. They're important tools. They will actually give you the details, the meets and bounds of the different zoning districts in a particular area. I will just note that these zoning maps don't exist for the entire district. They're actually in sections because they have so much detail, but they are useful tools as well. Another tool to understand what's taking place in the district, what's mapped there today, and being able to understand special purpose districts and also where recent changes have been made. So how can you access the zoning resolution? So it's available online. You can go through, you can actually search for certain things. So if you're looking for mandatory inclusionary housing, if you're looking for things you can look up any number of things. So lots of things there that you can search for in the zoning resolution, which is available on our website as well. As I mentioned before, you can use the Zola portal. Again, you can get a lot of detailed information on particular zoning districts. You can also zoom in completely and zoom in on particular lots, and it can give you information. So here you see a particular address. It tells you the zone that it's in. It tells you the size of the lot, so it gives you the lot area. It gives you the coverage. It tells you exactly what's on there today, what's permitted in terms of zoning. So you get a lot of detailed information here. It also tells you what community district it's in. When you zoom in like this, you can also find out what council district, and it'll also tell you the block and the lot. So what zoning changes might be proposed? Or why might zoning changes be proposed? So they may support planning goals and a vision for the future, balance future development and existing character, also may bring existing buildings or uses into compliance or conformance, or it also may just change the density or the use. I would note that Private applications are advised to seek input from local communities and elected officials before they even craft their proposal and come to us. So lots of times we have what are called informational interest meetings here. So we will meet with development teams. We also encourage them, once they have met with us and they've also met with elected officials, and they have somewhat of a crafted proposal, to meet with community boards. As a liaison, I was involved in many projects where they went to the board several times to get input on things from, the heights of the buildings. One particular project, they had some very, lively discussions about the types of commercial uses and looking at community needs and what would be on the ground floor of the building. So it's a good opportunity. We encourage them. We can't make them come, but we really do encourage them to come, because obviously you guys should play a critical role. Play a critical role in voting up or down a particular proposal, and it's to their benefit and to everyone else's to have those discussions and make sure that that the proposal, to the best of their ability, is aligning with the goals and visions that you guys have for your neighborhood. I'll also just note that zoning is one of many planning tools and strategies. So that includes housing. We also look at community resources. Jobs and businesses are also critically important. One of the things that I say all the time is that, changing the zoning and land use is one thing, but the other components that make neighborhoods whole, so access and mobility, housing, jobs, open space, those are all really part and parcel of what I call sort of community planning, which I think is really important. So these are some other tenets which I think are really important in terms of how zoning and land use work sort of in tandem with other tools. I'm going to stop there, and I want to see if folks have any questions for me before I even dive into the ULURP process. So, and I will fully recognize that's a lot of this is a lot of information I know to take in. So one of the other things I want to just also point out to folks is that we're happy to come back and do something more detailed at a committee level. I know you have a land use committee. So we're happy to do that as well. Recognizing, listen, like I said, I've been doing this for 17 years.
Right.
Still learning a lot of things all the time, and know that this is a lot for folks to digest. Also, just knowing that, listen, your responsibility in terms of zoning and land use is really important, but in order for you to be able to really do your job and represent your communities, it's really important for you to know and sort of understand what all this means, how it affects the neighborhood, and then what your role is and how you can sort of opine and chime in on projects and proposals.
Thank you so much. We do have some questions for you, Paul.
Okay.
We're going to start with Luke.
Okay.
Hey there, Paul. Thanks so much. Can you hear me?
Yes. You're a little faint, but yes.
I was wondering if you could explain what transit-oriented development is.
Sure. So transit-oriented development is it's a type of planning. It really is focusing on creating density around good transit access. And so, we have what are called transit districts and transit zones across the city, but it's really predicated on having good access to public transportation. So that could mean regional rail, could also mean subways and buses, but it really is the concept of generating density or more density closer to transit hubs. So obviously, when you get less access to transit, when you have less access to transit, you want to have you want to sort of promote a little bit less density. But as you get closer to transit, obviously, also the assumption is that people will be using mass transit in greater numbers, and there will also be less car ownership. That's not always the case, obviously, because there are lots of people that live close to mass transit, myself included, who own a car. So that's not all, but that's a general principle.
Thank you. Now we're going to go to Alfredo.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. Paul?
Yes.
It's Alfredo Figueroa.
Oh,
thanks
wow.
for your
How are you?
presentation. I'm good, my brother. Very, very, very informative. So my question is there, being that you was a DM and you know a little bit about what goes on in our communities, what we're experiencing up in Community Board 12 is as of right developments. I know you probably hear this all the time, but my thing is there something we can do at a legislative level that we can mandate whomever is gonna build a property in any city, in any one of the 5 boroughs, that they have to come before the community board to at least present it. The reason why I'm saying this is that we've been having a lot of issues with developers coming up here and buying properties, knocking them down, and building, 3, 4-story buildings, which is, permitted as of right in the R5. And, what you have is you have existing 1-story houses next to a 4-story building. So a lot of constituents come to us and complain and say, oh, why we let them do this and why we let them do that. And we try to explain to them, that, if it's an as of right development, they don't have to come to the board for approvals. Is there something or some way that we could put that they have to come to us to at least present their projects to us, whether it's permitted as of right or not? Like that, when people come to us, we can at least know and explain to them that the people did come, they did present it to us, and we could have some sort of understanding, what to give back to the community.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, listen, having been a DM and worked in the, so it happens a lot. Unfortunately, like we can't, there's nothing legislate like at this that we can force people to do. What I will say though is that, and I don't know that this is the case in CD12, but when projects are getting any type of public financing, so in some cases they will get financing from HPD. In other cases, they may get financing from the state. And one of the things that we do, if they come through us for a discretionary action, and they're getting money from the, so we tell them, and HPD will, almost mandate that they come to the board. So that's one lever that we have, but that's only if they're getting any sort of public financing. So one thing I would say is that anything that's getting finance from HPD, and they're very good about making sure that they come to you guys. The other thing I would say is that if they're not getting city subsidy, if they're getting financing from the state in some capacity, maybe working with state electives, because at some point they have to go through some process to get that funding, and so somewhere in that structure, someone would know about those. So that is one way. That's another route that you can go. But unfortunately, legislatively, unless they're coming through for a discretionary action or they're getting some kind of funding, it's really hard to regulate. But I hear you. The similar things were happening in Ward 4, where up in Highbridge, if you're familiar, where people they were buying they had these really big stately homes and they bought them. And so now what you're seeing are a lot of these, some as of right development. A few of them did come to us as a courtesy, which we appreciated. But to your point, a lot of them do not, they do what they need to do with buildings. They build whatever they're going to build, and and that's that. I will also just point out, if you see anything that you think might be an issue, definitely call 311, report it to buildings. That's another way to at least make sure that they are following the rules and being respectful of the existing residents that are living there today.
All right, my brother. Appreciate you, man.
No problem. Absolutely.
Thank you. And again, just to remind everybody, committee is really land use committee. Get yourself familiar when we have all these committee meetings. That's when we can have these larger conversations at large. Paul, we will definitely have you back. Ms. Granby, if you can add your question to the chat, that would be great. We can continue, Paul.
Okay. So no more any more questions? No,
Not from the board. No.
Okay.
We're going to save the rest of the questions. Anybody aside from board members, if you can add your questions in the chat, we will get to them.
All right. So bear with me as I navigate this to go to my other presentation. Again, we don't use WebEx. We use Teams at the city. So bear with me 1 second while I stop this one and go to my next presentation. What am I doing?
And Paul, will you be able to share the presentation with us?
Absolutely. I can email those to you.
Beautiful. Okay. We'll send it out for everyone that's interested.
Okay. So let's do. All right. So can you see that one? Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
All right. Okay. So now we're going to move on to the second module. So this is going to focus on the city's land use review procedure. So This is really important for you guys because this is the city's process that you guys are sort of the first stop when this process begins, and you guys have 60 days. So I'm gonna walk through sort of the ULURP process, like what all that means, talk a little bit about the detail, and then I want to highlight a few things that I think are really important, and then again, we'll also take questions. So what is ULURP? What is a land use application? What information is enclosed, is contained in the land use application? And then what is the public review process and what does that really look like? And sort of who is involved and who are the key players? So what is ULURP? So ULURP stands for the Uniform Land Use Review Procedure. It's a public review process which encompasses many different types of land use actions. And once they get adopted, they become law. As a board member, you guys play a really critical role in this ULURP process. As I mentioned, once an application has been certified by the commission to enter public review, the community board is the first place that it goes to for review and vote as part of the ULURP process. So in New York City, there are a few different pathways for development. So there's as of right, which we talked a little bit about earlier. So that is development that complies with the zoning resolution and the building code. That is regulated by the Department of Buildings. Then you have what are called discretionary actions. And discretionary actions are anything that is subject to approval. And so there are two paths there. One is through the Board of Standards and Appeals, and those are usually for variances where there are hardships on a property where they can essentially build as a right pursuant to the zoning, but they may have an issue with a steep slope. They may have an issue where they need to reduce the rear yard for some reason. And so in those cases, they wouldn't come to the Planning Commission. They would go to the Board of Standards of Appeal. And then the other path, obviously, is a ULURP path where they're looking to change the zoning on a piece of property, or in some cases, several properties. And so they would come to the department, submit an application, and then go through the public review process. So what are discretionary actions? So discretionary. So decision makers need up-to-date and factual information to guide recommendations and votes. So this is really where the land use applications really come in and play a role. So these are not all of them, but these are some of the different types of actions that are subject to ULURP. Some of these you will see more regularly. Some of them, for example, like sanitary or waterfront landfills, it is a land use action. I will be honest with you. At least in my experience, I've not seen one of those, but I will say, for example, zoning map amendments, we see that a lot. In urban development action areas in the Bronx, we have many, many, many of those. So you may, depending on where you're located in the Bronx, see applications for what are called UDAP designations. Disposition of city-owned property. So in several instances, I'm trying to think of one. So I'm thinking off the top of my head, but that's another action where the city will dispose of property for development. You will see that sometimes in what are called requests for proposals, where either the city may be doing an RFP, so that may be the Department of Housing Preservation and Development. You also may see the New York City Economic Development Corporation engage in RFPs, and there may be a disposition of city-owned property. So also changes to the city map. So that includes mapping and sort of demapping, particularly for streets. That can happen for any number of reasons. It could happen because you want to expand, use a street bed to expand a park or a plaza, or for any number of reasons. Or you also may want to map a street that's built but not actually existing on the city map. And then you also have acquisition of real property by the city. You have site selection for capital projects. So, and that in many cases, that can be for public facilities. So if you're building a new library, a fire station, a police precinct, that would fall under that category. And then you have combination acquisition and site selection, and then revocable consents. And then also you have housing and urban renewal plans that are project pursuant to city, state, and federal law. So this is sort of a wide range of sort of the most common things that are subject to ULURP. There are some others that are a little bit more complicated. You don't see as often, where we'll do a general large scale, which is sort of very detailed in terms of submitting site plans for the development of what's considered a large site, and but that's not as often. But these are some of the more common things that you will see. So what's the information that's included in the land use application? So some of the things that you have to answer if you're a private applicant or if even you're a city applicant. We are in the process right now in this office. We're working on the Bronx Metro North study. So we'll have to do an application. So whether it's a city sponsored initiative or a private applicant, you have to talk about, you have to answer these questions. So what are the proposed actions? What are the requested actions? So you have to complete that and fill out this form. There are also lots of other forms and documents that are included. There are maps that you have to include. There will be ownership forms. So there's a lot of detail that goes into that land use application. I also want to point out for you guys is that we have a tool called ZAP. And so ZAP is for any zoning applications. So once an application is filed, even if it's in draft form, it is public. So once it is public, you guys can view those applications. And I encourage you as a citizen, anyone can go onto ZAP and you can do a search by community district. If you know the specific address of a project, you can look it up via that address, and you can actually see the status of that project, and you can also click on and see the details behind the land use application. So I encourage folks, if you have or know about things and you know things are filed, or even if you're just curious, to take a look at what might be happening in your neck of the woods. So again, what else is included in this land use application? So you have to describe the proposed development. So in this case, a residential building, and it has to be detailed. It is really important to know. So in this particular case, it's 24,000 square feet. The proposed actions would facilitate a 12-story building. So all of those things are also an important component, and they're a requirement. I will also just say that for every land use application, as we work with private applicants and we work through the application process, there are standards that they have to meet in terms of the type of information that they have to supply for the application, and then the documents that support those. So that includes maps and other things depending on the types of actions that they're requesting from the city. So why the actions requested? So again, they will, so in this particular case, so you need, these are all zoning map amendments. So you can see here, this is manufacturing districts to residential, and it gives you a description of sort of, what the proposed development would facilitate and what the existing context of the development today. So you have to describe sort of, what's on those sites today. Are they vacant? Are there existing uses? You have to give a context of the neighborhood. You have to really build a story and a narrative that supports your land use action. So talking about, so in many cases, so if you're looking at, for example, a lot that may be underutilized or may be vacant, but it may be surrounded by maybe a 6 to 8 story apartment building. So in some cases, what applicant may do is they may point to that surrounding context to support the proposed actions and the proposed district that they select. I will also just note that we take sort of the crafting those actions very seriously. And the other thing that we do when applicants come to us, and as you might imagine, everyone, they're going to come to us and say, oh, we want R10. But the reality is that, listen, as planners, we have to be mindful of the fact that we have to take into account that, yes, there is a housing crisis. We want to facilitate, affordable housing and development, but we also have to take into account that there are existing neighborhoods and there's existing context. So we have to balance those out. And sometimes that can be a challenge, but it is really important for us to do as a department and also as a borough office. So other information, so where the project is proposed. So it's important to, and you can see this map here. So, you have here outlined sort of the project area. You have sort of a general context here, so you can see the existing zoning districts and what they propose. So this is also another important component of the application that's required for that. And this is a zoning and a land use map together. So you can see the purple is really more your manufacturing. You'll have the blue, which is typically some public facilities. So that might be schools, hospitals, things of that nature. And then your red is going to be sort of your commercial, also might be some other industrial uses. And then your residential is typically going to be yellows, oranges, and that could be a range of, 1 to 2 family buildings. In the oranges, you'll see more of your larger sort of either walk-up or elevator residential development. So the public review process. So this is the time where every entity, every stakeholder that's involved in that process chimes in on a particular proposal or an application. That includes the community board, that includes the borough president. In some cases, it includes what's called borough board, and I know that the board chair is familiar with borough board because he attends every month. and then after that, it will go to the City Planning Commission, and then it will go to City Council. And I'll talk a little bit more about what happens at each of those steps, and then who's required to hold hearings and things of that nature. So this is a graphic of sort of the public review. So certification happens. Now, before a project gets certified, we as a department have to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. So there is the application portion. There's also the environmental review that's required. So we have an environmental review division downtown that we work with. It's one of our specialty divisions, and they help us work with the applicant. And typically the applicant will have a consultant that does the environmental assessment, and we need to make sure that that it meets all the requirements for what's called SEQRA, which is a City Environmental Quality Review, and that is the environmental process that we go through in terms of assessing the impacts of proposed actions in a neighborhood. So all of that have to happen before an application can certify. It's important to note that we certify a project. It does not mean that the CPC or this borough office is endorsing a project, but by law, once an application has been filed and has met all the requirements, we have a responsibility as a city agency, as a city, to allow those applications to move through the public review process. So that is really important. So again, sort of looking across here, as I mentioned before, community boards are the first stop, then the borough president, then it goes to the planning commission, city council, and then the last stop would be the mayor's office or the mayor himself.
One question, Paul.
So,
a question.
yes, go ahead.
So
Yep.
you're at community boards, right? Let's say it came to us and we said no. Then what happens?
So the good question. So one thing I will say, so it goes to the borough president, and I'm going to talk a little bit more. It will go to the borough president, goes to the planning commission. So what happens is you guys are required to hold a public hearing. The borough president is not required, but typically they will hold a public hearing, particularly on items that are sort of critical to neighborhoods, and the borough president typically wants to give people an opportunity to speak and hear from folks if they so choose on items. The planning commission and city council both will hold public hearings. I just want to point out the importance of those recommendations. So you said you voted down and say no. So it's really important and we'll talk a little bit more about this, when you vote up or down, to tell us why. Because the planning commission as well as the city council, they want to know that so they can figure out, if they're going to take that in consideration. So you may vote it down and say no because of, so it's a 20-story building and you think it's too high. So, and I'm just giving you an example. So as it moves through the process, the borough president may see that they may be in agreement with you. Their recommendation may also echo those sentiments. Then when it gets to the commission and the council, that's an opportunity for folks so what will happen at those, so both of those entities will hold public hearings. So they also, at the planning commission, we do what's called pre-hearing review. And that's where the planner and the office that's assigned to that project reports back to the commission what they've heard so far from the community boards and their recommendation and the borough president. So those recommendations are important. I don't want people to think that those recommendations are just a fait accompli and that no one listens to them. They are important parts of the process, and I want to encourage Board 12 and all the boards to use that as a tool to communicate your likes or dislikes of a proposal, but communicate it in a way to let us and let the city know why you don't like something. There have been many cases where boards will just submit a no, and we don't know, but we want to know, so you're saying no, but we want to know why you're saying no. So that is really important. Now, and to your point, so you voted down no. Now, again, depending on what the project is and how, and again, if the no is no with conditions or no, so that no may get approved along the way, but that no may influence how it gets approved in that process. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, no problem.
But I just wanted to be clear that we are advisory, right? So like you said, it's important to know the why.
Yeah, you are advisory, but I really, when I was a DM, so I told my board, whether we're voting it up and down, we always have to have conditions. And I'm not, and so that was as a DM, that was my rule. I thought it was, was really important, and not for all, but for probably 90% of what we did during my tenure, we had some conditions. I thought, listen, you kind of throw the kitchen sink out there and you kind of see what sticks. I thought it was important that, that we were, giving a point of view and perspective on a project. It also gives people a flavor of, and sort of, you mentioned vision, so it gives people a sense of what your vision is in terms of, projects. And I will also just say that, listen, developers, other people will look at those recommendations and how boards vote on things as they're crafting proposals. So all of that, it all works in tandem. So it is really important for you to submit those recommendations and to put some teeth behind it in one way, shape, or form, from my perspective. So I encourage folks to do that. And it's helpful for us in this office, whether it's on that project or moving forward, to know what the in that moment in particular, what the board is thinking as it relates to whether, affordability levels, if it's an affordable housing project, it may be about heights and density, whatever that may be. But that information is really important for not just this department, but the city to know where you guys stand on things. So so once an application is certified, the board will have 60 days to review those materials. The application, so you're required to hold a public hearing. I also just want to note that the public hearing has to be noticed, and you have to do that in the city record. I believe it's 5 days before the hearing is to take place. That is really important because your hearing is not only an opportunity for the applicant to come and present to the board, it's also an opportunity for the community at large to come and hear about the proposal and the presentation. And for you as a board, you guys are representing your communities, but to hear what the community at large might have to say about those proposals. So, so it's also an opportunity for board members to ask questions. I'm not sure how you guys do things, but in many boards, a lot of these land use applications will go through the land use committee, and the full board may not see it until it actually comes through the ULURP process and for public hearing. So it's an opportunity for the board at large to be able to ask questions to the applicant and the development team. As I mentioned before, you have to hold a public hearing. And then, it's really important you consider how the application does, and we talked about this, or does not, sort of fulfill or sort of align with your vision for the community. Is it consistent with things that you put in your district needs statement? Is it consistent with whether you've created a vision document or whether you just articulated or what you're thinking? And maybe something that's related to what's happening in the district or happening, just policy citywide at that moment. Just consider all those things when you're considering these applications and, sort of the pros and cons. So your recommendation, so you have 3 options: approve, disapprove, or recommend with modifications and conditions. Again, I think, in all 3 of these, so I've seen approve with conditions. I've seen, disapprove, with conditions. But I think, again, the conditions, the thing I want to focus on here or for the, underscore is that it is important for us to know what, where you're coming from. So voting it up, or if you approve is great if you just want to do it like that, but particularly if you're going to disapprove it I think for everybody to know why. It's also an opportunity for you to just to memorialize that why, whatever that may be, because it's on the record. It becomes public record, not only for this application, it also becomes part for every ULURP application. The Planning Commission, once they vote, we have to do a report, a City Planning Commission report. Those recommendations and however you vote on those become part of that public record and become part of that document. So those recommendations are important. And even though they are advisory, I will say that, I think, the commission, the borough president, and the council, like they look at those recommendations, and, that test that, as part of their consideration of these applications, they look at those, and I think they take them seriously. So I think it is important for, for boards to go through the process, hold those public hearings. I know that, like having been a DM with the board, sometimes you feel like your voice is not heard, but I do think it's important. Sometimes you have to kind of say the same thing over and over and over again to get traction. But the saying is the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So if you're not saying anything, then people don't really know where you're coming from. And so what happens is that as a city, we're operating in a vacuum. So that it is an important tool. I know that sometimes, you feel like you go through this process and then things get approved, but it is important to have those things on the record, even if you're just able to point to them moving forward to say, this is how we voted on X project, which is very similar to this one. So this is just an example of a recommendation. So in this particular case, the board voted 13 in favor, 4 opposed with modifications or conditions. You can attach your conditions. Listen, I also want to point out to folks, there's a form that you get, and to the DM, you're not relegated to that form. I will just say as a DM, I would submit the form as sort of a cover sheet, and sometimes I would have a memo that was attached that sort of enumerated what the conditions are or what our thinking was. In some cases, I was the DM when we approved Jerome Avenue. That was many pages that we sort of enumerated some very specific things. So there are opportunities to do things out, beyond the scope of just submitting this form and ticking off a box. So don't feel like you're boxed in and that you can't say more if you'd like to about a particular application. So the next step in the process, again, is the borough president. So the borough president will have 30 days to consider that application. So they will sometimes be a borough board review, depending if it touches more than one community district, it will come to borough board. And then the borough president will typically hold a hearing, and then they will issue a recommendation. Again, the borough president, will definitely look at what the community board recommendation said and weigh that, in terms of their own perspective, and then submit a recommendation that will then, go on to both recommendations will go on to the city planning commission. So the commission is going to review the application. The commission is also required, pursuant to the charter, to hold a public hearing, the same as the community board. They will vote on these items, and then, as I mentioned before, they will issue a report that goes to the city council. And the commission gets 60 days once the borough president has submitted their recommendation to hold a public hearing and to consider the pros and cons and what they've heard from both the community boards and from their public hearing, the borough president, and then, submit their vote and recommendation, which will go to the council. And the next step in the process is it goes to the council. The council will have 50 days to consider that. The council also will hold public hearings, and then the council will vote on those items as well. And then the last step, if that happened, is the mayor does at the very end have the capability to review, and they have 5 calendars, to decide to review an application, and they also have the opportunity to veto the vote of the city council. It's also important to note that the city council can subsequently override the mayor's vote if they have by a 2 to 3 margin. So that's really sort of the overview of the ULO process. And again, I want to open it up and to questions from folks, either on anything that I've said here or on the process, et cetera. So,
Carl, do you have any questions or comments? Carl Stricker is the chair of our land use.
No, I don't. It was a great presentation. A lot of it I knew, but but most of the board members do not know. And I couldn't tell you, it was one of the best presentations I've heard in a long time concerning land use.
Well,
and I want to thank him for coming up and explaining it. It means our meeting's longer tonight, but every minute he spent here was informative to everybody who's on the board meeting tonight.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate again, we're again, and I appreciate, you've seen this information a lot. I also know that, the boards will, you will continue to get new members. There's a lot more sort of, turnover on the boards for any number of reasons. And so you get new people. And so, so you're sort of starting from scratch. So, two things I want to say. One, I want to definitely, offer up an opportunity. So if you'd like myself or, I plan to come back and either give this presentation, talk about zoning. Also, if you guys have questions about things, it's really important to me, for us to be a resource to the boards. As I mentioned before, I know that there are a lot of land use and zoning things that come your way. And you guys, but that's not your only responsibility. You have everything from transportation, you do district needs, constituent service. There's a lot on your plate. So whatever we can do as a department and an office to help you guys navigate that, we definitely want to be a resource.
I just want to tell you, I might ask you to come back to a land use committee down the road a little bit.
Absolutely. Beatrice, she has my number and my email. So, we're happy to, and unfortunately, like I said, the planner assigned to your board, he's out on vacation. Good for him. But he'll definitely be, attending your meetings. And he's great. And so, if you want us to come back, in the fall or any other time, we're happy to do so.
We do have some questions, but I would like to invite you to come back if possible. Look, we only have May and June left. And I would like to spend some time, if Carl allows, at his next committee meeting. You did touch upon how the board, although we are advisory, right? And I think you and I spoke about this, like there's a possibility that the board, aside from its main responsibilities, can at some point have a vision for this district and put in some sort of, is there like a process, how we would put in an application, a proposal, like how does that work for us?
So when you say vision, are you talking more sort of like at a sort of a high level, sort of like a policy statement about like what you see as sort of like key components? Because it can manifest itself in a bunch. So I'm trying to like just get to like what the end product is.
If it's let's say it's an underutilized space.
Sure.
Alfredo even brought up legislation, right? There's a few different ways that we are seeing, like how can, we have, aside from our board members, there's community residents that are here. We each have a vision for our district. How do we make some of these ideas come alive, right? I participated in a presentation where I participated in a presentation where the presenter said that before things come to us, whether it's from the mayor, whoever, developers, as of right, before things come to us, we do have an opportunity to present what our vision is. Underutilized space, a new development, something we may want to see. We don't know how to go about that, right? And so I know city planners are instrumental in helping us.
So a couple of things I will say. So, we won't write your vision per se, but one thing I will say is that, this is just my perspective. I think that, data, statistics, information are important to support people's points. So if we can be helpful in helping you, access data and information so whether it's demographic information, whether it's trends, those kinds of things, that we can definitely be helpful in that end. I would also say now, and I'm gonna say this, and I know I have my own sort of issues with the community district needs statement and that process. And I can say that because I did 7 of them.
Right.
George has done way more than me, but doing 7 of them. And listen, we had a meeting, recently here internally, and I said, listen, I don't know that, I think, and I think they recognize that it's a lot of work for DMs and boards to do this every year. Within the construct of basically you have 60 days from September to the end of October to do budget consultation and put all this together. But I will say that the district needs statement is also an important document because it memorializes what you have said. I will give you an example. Community Board 4 had a park, a parcel of land that they wanted to be converted to a park. It was on the district needs statement for 20 years. Now, that's a long time, but I will say there was a ribbon cutting for that park 3 weeks ago. So again, no one wants to wait 20 years. That's a very long time. But all that to say, that was in the district needs statement as one of their top priorities. It continues to be there. It was never removed. And so when Jerome Avenue came about and they were looking at, what are the board's priorities? What are the things we can focus on? Well, that was right there, and the board was able to say, listen, this is a priority for us. It has been a priority for us. You can go back through these statements over the course of the last 20 years and read that this has consistently been there. So I think there's a space for that as well. Whether it's, a particular parcel of land, in the district needs statement, you can identify, you can give a block and lot for something if within your priorities. That's a tool that's available in the district needs statement. I would also say when private applications do come through, that's also an opportunity for you guys to opine on, a vision, if you will. So for example, if there is a development that comes through and let's just say it's a housing development, and a lot of them, like, they will have, ground floor uses. In some cases, I would say probably in many cases, they may or may not have tenants that thought about those uses. That's also an opportunity for you guys to, put your imprint to say, these are the kinds of things that we'd like to see in the neighborhood. And listen, nothing is guaranteed, but if you put it there and you put it in your conditions, that's something for, these developers to consider. That's also another way for you guys to articulate, your vision, wants, and needs for your neighborhood.
Thank you, Paul. We do have Mr. Robert Hall. You have your hands up.
Yes. I just wanted to also say that this was a very interesting conversation we just had. I want to go back to what Mr. Figueroa said because I got a phone call and I hope I'm not being redundant.
It's okay.
Can we legislate an issue regarding the ULURP process? Can that be legislated so that a change could take place in the best interest of our particular community board?
So if you want to change the ULURP process, you'd have to change the city charter. I'll say this. So there have been a few charter revision commissions, and they have made some changes to the charter. I don't know. Listen. If you don't ask, you don't know. You won't find out. So certainly put it out there. I can't say definitively that they will make changes to the charter, but if you have a particular aspect of the ULURP process, then I certainly put it out there to the elected officials. I'd have to do. I don't know, like the charter revisions, like that has to go through a whole process. It has to be voted on, but. So I can't say that it can't happen, but that's how you would change the ULURP processes through the city charter.
Okay, thank you. I just want to be certain. That is something that it's been my experience. It has affected Community Board 12 for quite some time. You're trying to put some closure to that.
Now, is there a particular aspect of the ULURP process that you're focusing on, or do you not want to say it's a top secret? I'm joking.
No, this is about accountability. We want folks to come here and be accountable. We want to hold them accountable to what is in the best interest of this community. And ULURP doesn't give us that process. And that's what's being said indirectly. So that's why this conversation is even in existence.
No, I hear you. Again, I can't speak to the likelihood that you could change the charter, and depending on what it is, like as I said before, there were, I think under the previous administration, there were two charter commissions, and there were some revisions that were, I think there were a lot of things that were put on the table, and then it was whittled down to, I think, a few. But
okay, we'll have you back. So thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, you can join us at our committee meeting coming up next month, because we've been mentioning this for a bit, right? Like, how do we create that legislation piece? And so the follow-up, I guess, would be George should be back. We'll continue the conversation with him and Ursula, our elected officials. But that is something that we're really adamant about, and like you were saying, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So we definitely have a few issues that we want to get squeaky with. But any other questions?
I like that, get squeaky with. I like that.
Let me have, thank you. Any other hands, board members?
It's me, Beatrice.
Go ahead, Ms. Benitez.
Paul, I'm so glad that you talked about the district needs statement.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most important document any community board has. It's like a record history of what the needs are within the district and what we can
Absolutely.
improve upon. And I
Mhm.
think that's something that the board should be aware of. And when the question comes up and the board is asked, what do you want to put in your district needs statement? This is the forum for that particular quest.
Yep.
And I'm glad you mentioned it tonight, Paul. Your people.
Yeah, and I just and I don't want to step on George's toes, but I'll also just say this about the need statement. And we had it was an internal meeting because we one of our our planning support division works with boards and works on the district need statement. Um, the reality is that we know this, that within a community district from year to year, your priorities are not going to change drastically. The makeup, the things and your issues and challenges are probably not going to change drastically. So you can every year doesn't have to be a total like redo of the district need statement. You can do sort of like within, let's if you're looking at like from year one to year three, in that like you do a big one in year one, maybe in the middle you're doing some cosmetic changes, you're changing the narrative maybe, and then in year three. So there are different ways I think to look at it, but I do agree with you. I think I will say, listen, we still have work to do and improvements to make, I think, as a city, as a department, in terms of using that statement. One of the comments that I made, and I can say this because I was on the other side, was that I found the responses to be from the agencies to not be helpful. And if you've read some of them, they're very benign, like go speak to this person. Well, that doesn't really get to. So I think, as an agency, as a city, we're trying to figure out how we can be better with that. But I do think it's an important document, and I encourage you to use that as sort of as your bullhorn in some ways to articulate. I think Beatrice talked about your vision, but also to articulate like what your needs and your priorities are. And and listen, you only get 40 capital and 25 expense. We were on the opposite at board four, so we didn't have as many capital, but they were bigger ones, but we had a lot of expense items. And listen, they only were entertainment, but we kept putting them on there because we thought they were important, quote of critical components and pieces to the neighborhood. So
How does the board work with the city planner, our own?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Can boards have city planners as staff? Like how is that possible?
Can you have them as staff? I mean, are you talking about DCP, the Bronx office, or are you talking about just like the board like in and of itself?
Right. So I know that you said there is a city planner within the borough president's
Yeah, so
office.
there,
I
so
know
there's
that,
so in my office there's a planner that is assigned to each community as a liaison.
right. And I know like city
Yeah.
council, I know city council has their own planner as well.
Yeah, they have their own. So they have their own land use people. That's correct.
Do community boards ever had city planners that they've retained or had as
Uh,
consultants?
Yeah, so no, they've not had. I'm 99% sure that they've not had planners like full-time planners on staff. I will say so. There's a few different things, things that you may want to think about. So the city has a fellows program, which could be useful if you come up, and I think it's once a year. You submit a proposal and it's all boards across the city, and they look to find a match within the master's programs within. So I think it's Hunter, um, Hunter, Baruch, and a few other schools, and so they'll look to see if there's a match there in terms of skills and then a need for a project. So that's one route. I will also say there's an opportunity if you have money in your budget. I'm giving you ideas. I'm taking my sort of director hat, and I'm just for you to think about if there is discretion, if you have funding in your budget, you can hire, like a part-time person, create a scope of work for a project and have them do that. You can also do that through, and you can do that through, and we did that at board four through the the request for discretionary funds from the council members.
Paul, in reference to your thing, yes, you can get someone and hire them as a consultant to do a project if you have that much money left over in your budget, because we did it at CB3 many years ago when we did the Greenway.
Yep.
And that's how we got it done.
Yep.
But, you know, that doesn't always happen that way. But that is one of the ways that you can do it besides going to the master's programs at the
Yeah, and you know the first program I talked about, it's a tool that's available. It's also free, but it's also competitive, and so you could, and it's you submit it, you may or may not get get selected, and so that's one piece. The other piece is that you don't get to select the fellow. They select the person that they send to you, and I will just give you my own experience. My first year, we selected a fellow. It didn't go well, but for a number of reasons. So, oh, sorry. Someone asked why I was still sharing my screen. Apologies. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that.
May I say something?
Yeah, so that's definitely that's definitely a con to that project, because you don't get to select that person; they select them for you. The other route allows you to if you get the funding from the council member, then you can write a description. The person just has to register as a vendor for the city of New York, and then you set up a process for them to be paid. And we did that at Board 4. So it's a little bit more work. Georgia's probably like, I'm gonna kill you. So it's a little bit more work on the DM side, but it is a way for you to create a description for what you're looking for in terms of skills, create a scope of work in a project, and be able to get what you're actually looking for, and have some a little bit more control in terms of how that works.
Thank you so much, Paul. Carl, you had a question? Carl, I thought you wanted to say something. You're muted if you do.
Muted myself. I'm sorry.
Okay, there you go.
Are you there?
Yes, go ahead.
Yep. Okay, Paul, I just want to say about maybe 15, 16 years ago, this was passed, the mayor passed a ruling that all boards are allowed to have a city plan on their staff. But right after they did that, they cut the budget, so we couldn't hire anybody.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I could tell you, I've been working with city planning since Bob Esner. So I don't know if you know who he was, but he was very influential in the Bronx City Planning Department, going back to the late 60s, early 70s. And I know you weren't born then, so, but anyway.
Not in the 60s. I'm born in the 70s, so yeah. So
okay, so you were just a toddler when I was working with Bob Esner. So
yes, I was a toddler. That is true.
But there is a provision in the city charter somewhere,
right,
where the local boards can hire a city planner. It doesn't say city planner, a planner.
Gotcha.
And the key is, he who giveth taketh away. The minute they approve that, they cut the budget by 10%. So
yeah.
You're like you're standing on your head. But your presentation tonight was excellent.
Yes,
and
thank you.
I thank you for it.
My pleasure.
We have another hand up. Thank you, Carl. Ms. Denise Bond.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for your presentation. I just want a clarifying question just to make sure that I understand this.
Absolutely.
My name is Denise Bond. I'm the chair of the Parks and Rec for Community Board 12. And I just wanted to, part of what we want to do within the Parks Committee is to have more green spaces and recreational areas within our borders. We do not have enough of that. And so if I understand through your presentation tonight, you're saying that that's something that we should include in our district needs statement.
Absolutely.
Right.
And yeah, and what I would also say, so and as specificity is helpful. So for example, so if you want, more green space or it's a rec or let's just say a record and you have and there are and there are parcels of land that you guys want to identify, even if they're privately ownned,
Okay,
put that in there.
that was my next question.
Yeah,
Because I was trying to
even
figure
if they're
out
privately owned, because depending on, listen, there are all different kinds of instances where a piece of property may be privately owned, but you never know what may come down the pike, and the city may turn to that person and may try to negotiate whether it's for how opens it. You never know. So even I mean. There has to be a rationale behind it, but if you see something, you're like, listen, it's adjacent to wherever whatever the case may be. But if you have ideas around that, certainly put the address or the block and lot in the district needs statement, because it's easier. I shouldn't say easier. It's more helpful for the agencies to be able to respond in a way that's going to be helpful to you, to give you a response that's not like, oh, go see this person, or there's no funding for it. So the more specific you can be, the more helpful it is.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks again, Paul. We welcome you to come back. We will invite you to our committee meeting. We appreciate your time and expertise and knowledge.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And again, thank you all for your time. And again, I'll email these to you tomorrow. So you have them. And again, as folks have questions, if you want to email them to us, please let us know and we're happy to come back.
Thank you. Have a blessed one.
Okay, you guys have a good night.
Oh, wait, Anthony, did you have
So someone have a question?
question? Oh, no, he didn't. Okay. I thought Anthony
All
raised
right,
it. He
perfect.
did.
You have a great night. Hopefully you won't be here too long with your meeting. I hope I didn't take up too much time, but hopefully it was useful.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So that
Have a good one.
You too. All right. So that closes our presentation. We're moving on. Ursula, do you have anything for us? District managers report. I know George is not here with us this month.
No, I don't have anything. He's hoping to come back next month. He's doing
Beautiful.
well. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, great. Okay, so now we're moving on to the next item of our agenda, which is the approval of the board minutes. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we just have March 23rd's board meetings to
Yes.
approve. Okay. So I'd like, can somebody make a motion?
So moved by John Isaac.
Ms. Benitez?
You need a second?
Can I get a second?
Yeah, Robert Hall.
Okay.
Great.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to call
Can I
the
just get the
roll.
name of the second? I'm sorry.
Second.
Robert Hall.
Thank you.
Robert Hall. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Great. Thank you, Ms. Benitez.
Okay. Can I I'm going to call the roll now.
Great.
Okay. Judith Benitez, aye. Denise Bond,
Aye.
Anthony Boras, Ivan. Are you still here? Does anyone see him?
He was on earlier.
Huh?
He was on earlier. I'm checking. He's there.
He's there.
But he's not answering. Ivan.
You're on mute.
Board members, please unmute yourself so when I call, we can go to this very quickly. Carla Bossati.
Aye.
Michelle Brumfield.
Aye.
Victor Brown.
Aye.
Deacon Brown.
Aye.
Norbert Bryan.
Aye.
Desiree Campbell.
Aye.
Sadie Campbell.
Aye.
Joan Claude,
Aye.
Chris Devone. Chris Devone, not present. Torleen Dickinson,
Aye.
Kevin Eichelberger. Kevin Eichelberger, not present. Alfredo Figueroa. Alfredo,
Aye.
thank you. Johnny Goff,
Aye.
Robert Hall,
Aye.
Lisa Hayes. Lisa Hayes, not present. John Isaac,
Aye.
Theodore James,
Aye.
Keisha Martin. Keisha Martin,
She's trying to
not.
talk.
Aye.
There you go.
Aye.
You there?
I'm here.
Oh, hi, Keisha. Okay. Lucille Martin. Lucille Martin, are you still here? Did we see Lucille? Not present. I'm marking her not present if she's not answering me. Clinton Mike,
Aye.
Carmen Ortiz,
Aye.
thanks, Carmen. Queenie Paniagua,
She's excused, absent.
she's excused.
Yes, she reached out to me.
Anthony Reed,
Aye.
Sherry Samuels,
Aye.
Carl Stricker,
Aye.
Benga Sabea,
Aye.
Luke Sabados,
Aye.
Deborah Tirado,
Aye.
Deborah Walker,
Aye.
Ryan Walters, Ryan Walters, not present. Esther Yema,
Aye.
Beatrice Coronel.
Aye.
Is Ivan Boris back or is he there or what?
Yeah, I saw his hand was raised. Ivan?
Yes, I'm sorry. Abstain?
You abstaining?
Yes.
The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Benitez. Now we're moving on to the financial report. Ms. Talleen?
Good evening. Salutations and blessings. Nothing has changed since last month. We are still at 2625. My information is in the chat. And if there's anything you need to ask, please feel free to contact me. Please stay safe, everybody. Good to see you all.
Thank you, Talleen. Now we're moving on to the.
And it was
to
a
the
great presentation. Great presentation, Paul, if you're still on there.
I think he left, but we're going to have him back. Now we're moving on to the next item in our agenda, which is committee reports. First up, we have land use.
Yes, good evening, everybody. On April 10th, we had a land use hearing on the application from 222nd Street Realty for a continuance of their variance to operate their repair shop there. At the hearing, we heard nothing but opposition to it. And we found out the lawyer told us that he had 2 violations from the buildings department. And actually, according to Alfredo, he has 6. So, and he has never responded to any violation that he got in his business. Also, he clutters up the streets and he parks illegally all over on the sidewalks, on crosswalks, and so forth. The day we had the hearing, Ursula passed the area and saw that he painted lines and everything like he was asked to do. But there was nobody that spoke for him, and so and everybody who spoke was opposed. So the land use committee took a vote to deny his application for a continued variance. And I asked the board to please approve the land use recommendation that it's not the land uses report. And after the report is approved, I will give you a little more information on what happened at that meeting. So can I have a motion?
Motion.
Do we have a second?
Seconded. Denise Bond seconding.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, the next move would be normally to vote in favor of the land use committee's recommendation. But before I tell you, before we vote on it, I'd like to explain to you what happened. Everybody there spoke against the continued variance because the guy is definitely not a good neighbor. He has loud parties there. He 4-7 precinct had issues with him. He has 6 outstanding violations, which he never attended to. And also, instead of coming to the community board like it was supposed to, he went right to BSA for the continuance of the variance. Now, I'll give him a little break on that because we were in this coronavirus deal. But COVID-19 or whatever you want to call it. But he still had to come. The board was still here, active, even though we were virtually. Well, like we are tonight, we were active board, and he tried to go around the board because he knew that he was giving the neighbors problems. So it took 3 requests for them to attend the meeting on this continued zoning. His legal representation was a lawyer from New Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico, who has never been into New York or at that site as far as I know. And after we denied the variance continuation, he wrote a nasty letter to the board. He said he couldn't believe all these people spoke out about him being a bad neighbor, and that he knows only of 2 violations, not of 6. But one of our land use committee members checked it out, and he had 6 violations, totaling $24,000 that he has failed to answer, and still has failed to answer up to today. And the last time we gave him a variance, he had the same issues. He had a dirty site. He did this, he did that. He promised to do everything. So we took him at his word, and he went right back to doing what he was doing. And we got a letter from his lawyer saying the board is a racist board because we did not approve his application. He said the board is nothing but a bunch of racists. And he took exception to one member who took him to task about how can he represent somebody that he doesn't even know or what they're doing. And this guy has been bad news now going on, I guess. Well, when he renewed it, he bought the place in 1960, and he had to get the variance then. And every time we give him a variance, he promises to clean up his shop, but he doesn't do that. And I will tell you also, a local elected official in our community sent a letter to Board of Standards and Appeals telling them that he's against him getting the extension on his variance because he is not a good neighbor to the community. He causes community hardship. He has loud parties on his property and barbecues going into early morning hours when people have to get up the next morning to go to work and they disturbed, they can't sleep. So I'm asking the full board to vote in favor of a recommendation not to renew his permit, a variance permit at this location, because he'll go back to doing what he did the last 2 times we approved it. So the man is not at his word ever. So I just ask the board to support the Land Use Committee and its efforts to keep him from getting the renewal of his variance, which is, by the way, is 2 years past due, 3 years past due. So I need a motion from the board to accept the report of the, well, you did accept the report already.
No, we didn't. No,
Yeah,
not
we did. We did
Not
take it. I asked, we had a first and second for it to accept the report of the nominating committee. Now I'm asking for a letter to support the decision of the nominating committee. That's what I'm asking for.
Land use.
Can I have a motion?
Make a motion. Second.
Okay, can you take a roll call count, please?
First, can I know who made the motion? This is Michelle.
Anthony Reed.
Excuse me, I have one question. I heard something about nominating committee.
No, it's the land use.
Yeah, this is land use.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to be clear because you said nominating committee. That's why.
Yes, you did.
And the second was what the second was it Alfredo? Who was the second? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, take a roll call, please.
Okay. Judith Benitez, aye. Denise Bond,
Aye.
Ivan Boras,
Aye.
Carla Basati,
Aye.
Michelle Bromfield,
Aye.
Victor Brown,
Aye.
Deacon Brown,
Aye.
Norbert Bryan, not present. Desiree Campbell,
Aye.
Sadie Campbell,
Norbert Bryan present.
who's that?
Norbert Bryan. Sorry about that.
Are you saying aye or nay?
Aye.
Sadie Campbell? Sadie? Is Sadie still here?
Aye for Sadie.
Thank you, Sadie. Joan Claude?
Aye.
Chris Devone? Not present. Tolene Dickerson?
Aye.
Kevin Eichelberger? Not present. Alfredo Figueroa? Johnny Goff?
Aye.
Couldn't hear you.
Robert Hall?
Aye.
Lisa Hayes? Not present. John Isaac?
Aye.
Theodore James?
Aye.
Keisha Martin?
Aye.
Lucia Martin. Not present. Clinton Mike.
Aye.
Carmen Ortiz.
Aye.
Anthony Reed.
Aye.
Sherry Samuels.
Aye.
Paul Stricker.
Aye.
Benga.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Luke Barbados.
Aye.
Deborah Tirado.
Aye.
Deborah Walker.
Aye.
Ryan Walters. Not present. Esther Yema.
Aye.
Beatrice Coronel.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody on the board.
Thank you, Carl. Now we're moving on to the next committee report, housing. Mr. Robert Hall.
Yes, on the 23rd of March, the gentleman came before us to ask whether we would be interested in allowing a lot of factories to have their variance changed so that they could have affordable housing. So we had that, the housing committee had that meeting, and it was decided that we would like to entertain a letter to approve the fact that the variance should be changed for these factories to be able to now have affordable housing. But to make a long story short, the reason we're going along with this program is in the best interest of the borough of Manhattan, because it does not really affect directly the community board community, to make a long story short. So we decided to go along with that. And I believe Madam Chair said it didn't help Kathy Hochul with the budget. But in any event, we decided to go forward. But it's just a letter of support. But that letter does not affect Community Board 12 as far as our particular units in our community is concerned. So that's basically it. I can't remember the gentleman's name, and Madam Chair, maybe you can mention it.
John Sanchez from Fibro.
There you go. Okay. So I don't know. Do we need a motion, or should we just go forward with the letter?
We do have a question. Luke, is it related to this?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point of clarification that I think the John Sanchez was talking about office to residential conversions rather than factory to.
I stand corrected. You're right, Mrs. Savados. You're absolutely correct. All right. But in any effect, it did not really upset our community board district, to make a long story short. And I want to thank everybody that took part. All right, even Mr. Reed and my friend there on the Department of Buildings. All right, I want to thank everybody's input. So, and that's basically it.
You have one more question, Anthony. Is your hand raised?
Yes, my hand is raised. I just wanted to ask you, he said that it didn't have anything to do with us, but it did have something to do in Manhattan. Am I correct?
Well, to make a long story short, the entire idea was really to kind of assist a lot of the buildings in Manhattan. For the most part. That's the way it was presented to us.
All right, the reason why I asked you that, because I wanted to know if we reached out to any of the boards in Manhattan and see what they thought about it, because if it doesn't affect us, it might affect them. And if we give a letter okay and it affects them in a negative way, I don't want to be a part of that. You know what I mean?
Oh, I agree with you. No, it was on a positive nature, and it seemed as if a lot of other boards were going along with that program, because housing affordability is hurting everyone everywhere. To make a long story short, and that was the idea. And I mentioned Manhattan because that's centrally where that's where the idea is hurting the most. But we're okay. We're okay with it. Make a long story short.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. I also like to mention, Robert, if you permit me to, is that most of the office buildings that would be converted has to be built before 1960 because the design of the buildings changed in 1960, which makes them almost impossible to convert to housing at a reasonable cost. Prior to that, 1960, the buildings that were built can easily be converted to from office building to apartments.
That was mentioned that year. You're absolutely right, Carl. You're absolutely right. I just wanted to cut to the chase because I know that was really the bottom line. And I wanted to make sure that Board 12 was not directly affected. And it hasn't been. So that's basically it.
Well, I'll make a motion that we accept the report of the Housing Committee.
Second.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Are we also having a motion in reference to the letter of support? I need a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
Who's seconding it?
Ivan Boris.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, all participants.
I'm getting ready to call the roll.
No, so I have a question. So the statement of recommendation will say what? Just for my own clarity.
Madam Chair, you have the letter?
So
that we support. It basically states that we support the conversion of office buildings to apartment buildings. And this will be mostly in the financial district, by the way.
Right. So that's my question. Being from Community Board 12, knowing that it will not affect the Bronx, I'm saying that will the letter state that for clarity for us, for our own protection, since it will not affect us in the Bronx? I think that goes with what Anthony Reed's concern is.
That's correct. It does state that.
And also, Community Board 1 voted in favor of it, by the way, which is the community board that represents the financial district.
Can we move forward?
Yeah, let's take a roll call. Or just say if anybody's opposed. I mean, yeah.
Right, it's quicker. Is anybody opposed?
Yeah, yeah.
I'll abstain, Michelle Bromfield.
I abstain as well, Deborah Walker.
Denise Bond, abstain.
And it was Deborah Walker? Thank you. Anyone else abstaining? Anyone recusing themselves from this? Do I have a motion of yes? Aye?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Aye.
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 Great. Now we're moving on to the next committee report, Health and Human Services. Clinton?
Oh, sorry. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So on April 5th, 2023, a meeting was held of the Community Board 12, Health and Human Services. The meeting was chaired by myself. At this time, the committee is without a chairperson. The meeting was not attended by any of the Health and Human Services committee members. Meeting commenced at 7:06 p.m. on April 5th. The agenda on the agenda was the proposed individualized residential alternative home (IRA) sponsored by Daybreak Independent Services of 4244 Verio Avenue, Bronx, New York. Representing Daybreak was Vilas Loban, the president and CEO of Daybreak. Daybreak Independent Services presented their case for an IRA, individualized residential alternative home. They're proposing a residence. I believe I said the address wrong before. It's 4244 Virio Avenue for 6 young adults, ages 18 to 21, with 24-hour daily oversight and guidance, with independent living skills, recreation, and transportation, while providing employment opportunities for members of the community. Presented to the community at the meeting time were signatures of various members of the community who support the residents in the district. Daybreak is asking for a letter of support from the community board for this project. One member of our community board expressed their support for the residents as they live in the direct community in which the residents would be in, and noted the work that they are currently doing in the community with their current consumers is impressive from what has been seen. There was no quorum for the community for this committee meeting, and this letter of support could not be voted on at the time. That's it.
But the full board can vote on it.
Yes. So they would like a letter of support from Community Board 12 for their IRA, which I said includes 6 individuals aged 18 to 21. It's right on the same block as their Daybreak Independent Services offices.
As a person that lives nearby, I make a motion that we give them a letter of support.
Do we have a second?
A second, Anthony.
Thank you. So
take a
Question? Anyone? Call the question? Okay.
Coverage?
Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Ready to vote?
No.
Ask if anybody's against it. We can go that way.
Let me ask, are there anyone abstaining? No abstentions?
Yes, one, Deborah Walker.
Anyone else? Any recusals? Yes, myself. I'll be recusing myself. And the rest,
I
are
would
you
like to
ready?
abstain, Deborah Torado.
Deborah Torado? Okay, thank you. The rest, are we all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're moving on to Parks and Recreation, Ms. Bond.
Hi, good evening, all. Just as a point of clarification, Madam Chair, I need to go over my committee report with summarizing what took place at the meeting and then go into what we need to vote on, yes?
Very briefly, just
Okay.
what was under discussion, the PEP Command Center, Van Cortlandt Park, and what the committee voted on, which was yes, I believe. In
Right, but no,
favor
it
of
also says
support
committee
letter.
report, so I just wanted to clarify. So I should give the committee report information.
Oh, summary of what happened, right? What we're voting
Okay.
on today.
All right.
A brief one, and then we will take a vote on that.
Okay.
To accept the report.
All right. So the committee report, the Parks and Rec for Community Board 12 had a meeting on April 11th at 7 p.m. Just the brief overview of what took place during the meeting. We revised the mission statement. We talked about the PEP command for Van Cortlandt Park, and that is what we're going to be voting on tonight, and I'll give more information about that in a minute. We also got more information about the Van Cortlandt Park pedestrian bridge alternative.
Ms. Bond, we're just talking about the PEP Command Center.
Okay. All right. So the PEP command, there was a letter drafted by Community Board 8, the Parks Department, and what the committee voted on was to send a letter of support to go along with the Community Board 8. Ms. Bromfield made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Boris, and the committee rather voted unanimously in acceptance of this. So what we have in here is that their Community Board 8 has sent a letter requesting that there be a new PEP command center open at Van Cortlandt Park, because the nearest one to Van Cortlandt Park now is located in Pelham Bay Park. And so the response time for the PEP officers would take some time, as opposed to having one right in Van Cortlandt Park, which would be a benefit to the community. So that is what we need to vote on, is that letter of support. Can I have a motion for that, please?
Oh, can we get a
I'm sorry, a
motion
motion to accept the report.
I make the motion to accept the report.
Seconded.
Carl did a motion and Ted James seconded.
Okay, perfect.
Question?
I'm sorry?
Is there a question?
Any questions?
Are we ready to vote?
Yes, we're ready to vote, Ms. Benitez.
Okay, are there any abstentions to this? Any recusals?
Hi, this is Luke. I recuse myself.
Anyone else? Are we all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Beatrice, there's a question in the chat from Wilkins Swerger.
But only board members can ask questions.
I think this is about, he wants to know if a vote was held. I think that's with the auto repair place on 222nd.
Yeah, it was held.
He's asking a question in the chat.
Okay, let's finish with this. Thank you,
Okay.
Clinton. Okay, so now, Ms. Denise Bond, you'll make a motion for the letter of support.
I make the motion, or someone else has to make the motion?
Yeah, that's what's next.
I move to make a motion to letter of support for the PEP Center.
Thank you. We need a second.
Anthony, second.
Thank you.
Luke, you're recusing it.
That's right.
I'm correct? Okay.
Right, thank you.
Everyone else is saying aye?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you, board members.
Okay, yes, William, the vote was held, to answer your question.
Okay, my apologies. My next door neighbor is an elderly man, and he fell down. He hurt his leg just now, and so I was outside helping him. I heard him yelling, and so I didn't get a chance to be in here. I knew the hearing was going on, but I didn't get a chance to walk back in. So my apologies. I'm not meaning to guess what the vote was, but I do want to say that my client is making efforts to meet the requests of the BSA, and that they are, attempting to abide by that. They have made some changes already, but obviously, I think I know the opinion of the community board, at least the land board or the land committee. I know that what their opinion was, and so if it went similar to that vote, then that's okay. My client is working diligently to meet all the conditions that the BSA is placing on him and his business, and attempting to become a better neighbor to the Community Board 12.
And that's what he said the last time.
Denise Bond, your hands is up.
Yes. Just to Mr. Consuego, I think that perhaps instead of writing the letter that you did in reference to the meeting that was held at the Land Use Committee, maybe if your client had come with a different posture, then things could have gone a little bit smoother. But definitely, you are right that it went just the way you anticipated. That's all. Just a comment.
Response. Okay, so that concludes our committee reports. We're moving on to the next item of the agenda, which is new business. As you all know, we have elections coming up.
I'm sorry. Can I interrupt you real quick?
Go ahead.
If I'm not mistaken, if you're going to recuse yourself, Luke and Judith, I think you have to give a reason why. I know the reason, but for the record, you have to give a reason why, if I'm not mistaken.
No, you're right.
You're right, Ursula.
You're right. And,
Sure.
and that's my mistake. Luke, state what your recusal is for.
Yes, this is for the Parks Committee letter. This is because I'm employed by Bronx Community Board 8, so it would be a conflict. Thanks.
Okay, and for me, it's because, and the reason why I recused in reference to the IRA is because I'm also part of Rising Ground, which is similar, or, well, we have an extension of that program with us. So that is why I'm recusing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thanks, Urs. Now we're moving on to new business. As you all know, board officers elections are coming up. And so we need to formulate now a committee, an elections committee.
So we need nominations from the floor. 5 people.
For the committee?
Yeah, for the committee. The committee has to have 5 people.
Okay, do we have any volunteers?
They have to be nominated from the floor.
So a board member can nominate someone from the floor.
Correct.
Okay.
In fact, I'm going to nominate Denise Bonds. She doesn't have to accept, but I'm nominating her.
I'm not allowed to, so it's all on you, board members.
Denise, are you willing?
Oh, sorry. I didn't know if that was my time to reply. I've
Yes.
done it for a few years now. I think someone else should give it a try. We have some new members. Some other people should jump right in and get be a part of that process. Thank you, Mr. Stricker.
You're welcome.
I have a nomination.
Go for it.
Alfredo Figueroa.
Alfredo, do you accept?
Accept. Sorry. Accept what?
Do you accept to, we're right now formulating a committee for the elections, officers elections coming up. And we need a 5-member committee for this. 5, do you accept?
To do what? What y'all want me to do?
Be on the nominating committee.
Nominating committee for elections that are coming up.
Yeah, I guess.
Yes, thank you.
We got one yes, I guess. Who else? Anybody else have recommend anybody?
I nominate Luke Zabatos. John Isaac.
I accept.
Thank you. Luke, do you want to nominate someone else? We'll keep the ball rolling that way.
I nominate Benga.
Benga, do you accept?
Yeah. Thank you very much for the nomination. I accept. I accept. Thank
Benga,
you.
can you nominate someone else?
Oh wow. Let me see.
We have a lot of new members.
Okay.
There's too many gentlemen.
I'm looking at Miss Sherry Samuels.
Okay.
Dr.
I know.
Sherry Samuels.
Sherry,
Okay.
Sherry.
Okay.
I
Dr.
accept.
Sherry. Okay. All
No,
right.
Sherry,
Thank
I accept.
And
Dr.
I
Sherry.
recommend Clinton Mack.
Clinton.
Thank you, but no thank you. I've done it.
Hey,
I've done it 3 times myself. Somebody else
Sherry,
do
can you
I
nominate
know.
someone else? Sherry.
Yeah, I nominate John Isaac.
He's on the executive board. He can't.
Yeah, he can't. He's a vice.
Executive, you can't nominate.
Second
Okay,
vice chair.
I understand. I nominate Deborah Walker.
Deborah Walker, do you accept?
No, I decline. Thank you very much.
We're looking at Mr. Anthony Reed.
I nominate Anthony Reed.
I
Okay.
accept.
Beautiful. So we have 5 committee members. We have Alfredo, we have Luke, we have Benga, we have Sherry, and we have Anthony.
Right. And now the 5 of them will meet and see who's the chair of the committee will be. That's up to them.
Okay, so between the 5 of you, you will nominate the chair of that committee. We need to move fast, right?
Well, no, you don't have to do it before the board. They can do it back. They're a committee. They can choose their chair when they meet.
Right. And so, Ursula, do they need to schedule something with you for WebEx?
It's a committee meeting, so they have to schedule.
Right. Ursula, are you with us?
They do. They do.
Okay.
They can contact her, or she can contact them.
Right. So the following step, maybe Alfredo, you can take charge of that, connecting with Ursula to schedule a committee meeting for you guys. And so I'm new to this. Ms. Benitez or Carl, can you walk us through what the next steps are? Because I believe next month, then
Next month, which is May, they will recommend that they will come up with a nomination for each position. And at that time, since we don't want to hold this thing over to the summer, at that time, if there's any nominations from the floor that can be brought up for each office that's up for grabs, or renewal, or whatever you want to call it. So at that meeting, we'll have the final decision. If there's no nominations from the floor, the 5 nominee, the nominating committee, whoever they recommended, will be voted upon in June. If there's no conflict, if there's 2 people for the chair, 2 people for the vice chair, or then what will happen during the month of May, or May into June, will be that votes will go out to everybody by email, and they will check off on who they're voting for. Whatever, Joe Schmo for second vice chair, and Harry Burt for second vice chair. Well, if you want Harry Burt, well, he'll be, you check his name. If you want Joe Schmo, you check his name. And then in June, we will have the final count and who's the new executive board.
Luke, you have a question? Thank you, Carl.
Thanks so much, Carl. I just wondered if all of the officers are seeking renomination, or is that something you can find out later?
Well, what you could do after you as a committee, you can check with each one if they're considered to run again.
Any
right.
last questions?
And if they are, then they become part of the nominating committee that they want to run. You can have 2 or 3 people running for the same position, but they have to be presented in May.
Great. Any questions before we wrap up? It's 9:48. I don't want to keep you any longer.
Well, this was a long meeting, but it was worth it.
Thank you.
Chair, I would like to, not Chair, President, Chair.
I'd like to make an announcement.
Yes. Is this Ms. Goff?
Okay. Yes. The YMCA, the new Y, 1250 Laconia Avenue, have partnered up with SAFER and another organization to have a Mother's Day cocktail brunch, Bits and Bites, on Mother's Day, which is the 14th of May, from 12:30 to 3. I'll send a flyer to Ursula, but I wanted to make sure they asked me to do the announcement at the board tonight. May 14th, which is Mother's Day, they are having a cocktail brunch. The YMCA and my group and another group, they're going to be giving out, they're having dinner, lunch, whatever you want to call it, with a rose and a cup of apple cider, or a glass of apple cider.
Thank you, Ms.
All is
Goff.
welcome, including children.
Great.
This is at the Y, Johnny?
Yes, it is, Carl.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, dear.
Ms. Donald, I have a question.
Go ahead, Ted.
Yeah, so earlier Clinton reported that his committee had no chair and also there was no quorum. Is this a new committee? And I don't know if I got a notice for this meeting, but he also said that there were no members present for that committee. Can you enlighten us on that?
That committee currently does not have a chair. It was Mr. Carl Lanzana that used to chair that committee. And committee members did not show up.
Was there a notice that was sent out for that meeting?
Yes, Ursula sent out the notice.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Denise, do you have your hands up?
I do. I fail. Oh wait, sorry. I failed to mention also when I was my turn to speak about the committee report that Jamba Gardens, the gardens that the community board has supported, is having their first planting event on May 6th from 12 to 4. The flyer has been sent to Ursula, and I believe she has sent that out. So please come out and support if at all possible.
Thank you. Talene?
Yes, I just wanted to let everybody know that the applications for the Summer Rising program is very low in District 11. So Ursula will receive a flyer tomorrow and get it out to all the board members. And you can please share it.
Thank you, Talene. Alfredo?
I just wanted to see, I think I saw Toba's name here. Is Toba, are you still here? Toba? Toba? Could have sworn I saw, but just want to an announcement that we have a new commanding officer in the 47th precinct.
Yeah.
I don't got the new. I'll definitely invite him to our next full board meeting so he can introduce himself. Want to put that out there.
Alfredo. Okay.
On the ed, go ahead. I'm sorry. On the ed committee, I mentioned to Ms. Dixon that District 11 Deputy Superintendent Mr. Russo is on leave, and they have an interim acting Deputy Superintendent, and I'll be invited to her to the board meeting in the month of May.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right, everyone. Well, I don't want to keep. Oh, wait. Robert Hall, do you have your hands up?
Yeah, I'll yield. I'll yield. I'll yield. That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you
I
so much.
make a motion that we close the meeting.
Yes.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your
Good
patience.
night, all. Good night. Good night.
Great meeting,
Okay,
Ms.
God bless you
Benitez.
all.
Great job. Great job.
Thank you.
That
God bless
Mother's
you
Day
all too.
free?
Happy Mother's Day. Well, and remember, there's a lot of committee meetings coming up. Please participate. That is your time. to speak at length. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Good
Oh,
night.
wait, and the
That
meeting, we're
Mother's
closing
Day
the meeting
at the
out.
White
Sorry.
Tree?
We're closing the meeting out at 9:54 p.m.
Clinton, it's cold in here, man.